Awesome. All right. Sounds like we're coming through loud and clear. So, well, I am going to share my screen and we'll get into it right from the get-go. So here we go. Here we are. Beautiful. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another iHealth Saunas webinar. Tonight we are looking into bioharmonizing strategies to beat stress. That's a really good title, Nick. Much better than de-stressing in 2020, which was my title. We should have gone with that.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah. And tonight we have Nick Moss. Thanks for coming on, Nick. Nick is a brain-based practitioner and educator, kinesiologist, functional neurologist, mind-body medicine practitioner, a health retreat facilitator, and most importantly, a dad, which is definitely the hardest of all of those professions, I would imagine.
Most rewarding as well.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Nick, you're here to talk to us about some stress-related activities tonight and de-stressing and just getting into everything about stress, which is really timely given what's going on in the world at the moment. So thanks for coming on. I'll keep talking in the short term and then you'll do most of the talking throughout the evening. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Alex Tyson. I'm the business owner at iHealth Saunas. Someone actually gave me the name the Sauna King the other day, which it feels all right. So maybe I should put that in. I also host the Sweat It Out podcast, and I'm a fasting enthusiast, and I'm just into the things we can do to look after this amazing body that we've been gifted. It's what all of my focus goes into really in my day-to-day life and also in what we do at iHealth Saunas. And so it's an absolute honor to be able to bring this knowledge and people like Nick to everyone and help people learn and, strive to do a little bit better in their health and wellness and live a better life. So that's who we are. Quick housekeeping tonight. If you have any questions, put them in the chat, or there's actually a questions section in the Zoom. Don't ask me how to do that on the phone. It always seems to be different or really challenging. But there is somewhere you can do it on a phone. If you're on a phone, if you're on a laptop, it's pretty straightforward. So put your questions in there and I'll do my best to ask Nick the questions as we go. Our intention for tonight is to help us learn how to better understand and handle stress. Some of the things we're going to cover is what is stress, what causes stress, 3 stages and responses to stress in the body, how stress affects immune function, what role does the vagus nerve play, and for some people, what is the vagus nerve, and simple, effective, and holistic approaches to modulate stress, such as sunlight, earthing, movement, vagus nerve therapy, heart-brain integration, whole brain states, acupressure, and tapping. There's a lot of good stuff here, Nick. Are you excited?
You just cut out a little bit there, mate.
Oh, sorry, mate. I think I'm back.
That's all good.
I've covered the topics. Just to give a little bit more background, Nick, did you want to give a little bit more background about yourself?
You can do that if you want.
Oh,
I'll be talking for the rest.
Yeah, cool. Nick is a former infantry soldier for 5.5 years. We actually talk about that in a podcast we've done previously. There's some fun stories there. 13 years experience in the health and fitness sector as a multidisciplinary practitioner. 13 years as a personal trainer, specializing in rehabilitation and brain-based training. 7.5 years experience as a kinesiologist, mind-body medicine and integrative medicine practitioner. 6 years experience as a functional neurology practitioner. 5.5 years experience as a lecturer and course developer, the Diploma of Sports Kinesiology, and for the College of Complementary Medicine. Master Applied Movement Neurology practitioner and faculty member, practitioner, mentor worldwide to therapists from multiple modalities, and main clinical work is focused on chronic and acute pain, anxiety, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, autoimmune, neurological, and childhood development disorders. Tonight is all about stress, and that was pretty stressful reading all that because you've done so much, Nick. So yeah, as I said, it's very exciting to have you on. And so with that, I will hand over to you to start to talk about de-stressing in 2020. Over to you, mate.
Thank you, Alex. And thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in tonight. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. But I suppose tonight's talk was going to be pretty apt, considering what's happening in the world right now, globally. And specifically, if you're in Melbourne right now as well, we're under a lot of stress, like a lot of the time. We're having to adapt to different circumstances and changing times. So I thought it was pretty apt timing to do this webinar with Alex tonight. So as you saw by the previous slide, I have done a few different things, and I'm very multidisciplinary, and I've trained in multiple areas of health. But if I was to be a specialist in one area, I would say it would be stress, because pretty much everyone that walks in into my office has some level of stress. And a lot of the times, if you can get the bodies to work in a self-healing state, to be able to get back to homeostasis or out of the stress response, a lot of the healing is done by the body itself. So tonight is really not so much high-tech stuff, but we're going to look at how do we not hack, but how do we bio-optimize, how do we use simple practices to bring forth the technology that's already within the body to harmonize us with our environment and to harmonize our nervous system so we can beat stress or manage stress. Okay, so I'm a pretty experiential teacher as well. So I thought, before we begin, we're going to start off with a bit of a process, which is about activating a heart-brain coherence and whole brain activation. This is actually one of the strategies that we're going to discuss later on. It's so simple. So a lot of these things I'm going to show you tonight, they're quite simple, but it doesn't mean that they're not profound in their effects. So they're simple to do, but the complexity of what happens with them is quite profound. So many people might have heard of the Heart Math Institute. They're like a world-renowned institute that have studied the electromagnetic fields of the heart. And a lot of their work is based on focusing on the area of the heart and activating heart-based emotions such as love, gratitude, and appreciation. Okay, so we're going to do a bit of that. We're also going to activate what's called a whole brain state. So you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there is two brains. We have a left and a right brain. Now, when those two hemispheres are connected and there's good communication between the corpus callosum, generally that's going to lower the stress response. Okay, so we're going to combine two things together. We're going to cohere the brain and the heart simply by focusing on the heart and activating a feeling of appreciation, which is a very yin, and it's a very receptive type of way of being, because we're going to learn a bit of technical information tonight. So you want to be in a good state to be able to take on that information. So the way we're going to do it, the first part, we're going to connect the left and right brain. So hopefully you guys can see me here. Can you see me here, Alex?
Yeah.
So what you're going to do is you're going to grab your hands like this. So whether you're watching this live now or you're watching it on a replay, you're going to go around like that, twist around, and then you're going to bend your elbows and then bring your hands to this position here. Okay. You're going to cross your feet together as well. So this is now connecting the left and right brain. And now what we're going to do, it doesn't matter whether you have eyes open or eyes closed, probably better with eyes closed, is you're just going to focus in on the middle of your chest or your heart space. So all you're going to do, see if you can perceive the beating heart. Can you feel the physical action of the heart beating? This is what's called interoceptive awareness, or having an awareness of your own physical body, which automatically de-stresses you. So focusing in on that heart space, okay, but now what we're going to do is we're going to activate a feeling of appreciation. And we're going to do it with the breath. So as you inhale, you're going to feel a deep appreciation for yourself. And as you exhale, feel a deep appreciation for anything around you, anything external. Could be this webinar, could be your friends, your family, your loved ones, anything that you're thankful for. As you breathe in, you feel a deep sense of appreciation for yourself, for taking the time to look after your health, to learn information that can help you be a healthy, happy being. So what I'm just going to invite you to do for about another minute or so is just keep that focus on the heart space while feeling appreciation for yourself on the breath in and appreciation for other on the breath out. What you may notice as you start to do this is a sensation, a light vibration in your heart. It starts to build and build as you keep activating that heart-based emotion and feeling equal appreciation for yourself and equal appreciation for other. And then just spending 30 seconds not really focusing on anything at all apart from just sitting in the stillness. We're harmonizing our biological oscillators, our heart and our brain, the two largest electromagnetic fields in the body, the heart being much larger. When the heart is activated, it communicates up through the vagus nerve into the brain, calms our whole body. So opening your eyes when you feel ready. Gently uncoiling the hands. And just notice how you feel now compared to before. How do you feel?
Well, I don't know if I'm talking on behalf of everyone else, but I just feel like there's a greater connection with my body. It's like I'm back in my body now, you know? It's just like, oh, here I am, you know?
Yeah. So I definitely feel a lot calmer, a lot more integrated. My brain feels like it's working better. Okay. So calm, great. Thanks, Tammy. That's what we want. And that was very simple. All we did is we focused on the heart and we activated a heart emotion, love, gratitude, appreciation, can be any of those ones. And we do it whilst activating a whole brain state, which by itself, both those things by themselves are fantastic. But when you combine them together, when you stack them together, it's amazing. Great to do before bed. Great to do before any business meeting that you're having, any meeting with any that could potentially be stressful, and doing it consistently over time. Like that one done for say 5 to 10 to 20 minutes a day will keep you on a pretty good level. I definitely noticed it myself. All right.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So let's move into the theoretical side of things. Okay, so what is stress? Okay, so stress is really it's physiological stimuli. Okay, it's a physiological response to stimuli. Now, I really love this quote by Feldenkrais on the left here, up in the top left. It says, in short, health is measured by the amount of shock a person can take without their usual way of life being compromised. So what I take out of that is what I've seen a lot is that it's not what happened, it's how you responded to what happened. Okay. And so as you see the guy on the right there, he's freaking out. It's something, he's losing his marbles. He's lost his brain basically. And the guy on the left is like chilling out in the midst of chaos. And so ideally, we all want to work towards being in a relative state of calm as much as we can. That being said, with life, life is inherently stressful, and that's actually what makes it amazing. So we want to build up our nervous system through these practices to be able to deal with the inevitable challenges and stresses that life throws at us. Okay, move on to the next slide. Yeah, so what is stress? It's a physiological response to internally or externally generated stimuli. It's useful in short spurts to improve function or respond to a threat. So what I mean by improve function, so when you go to the gym and you want to get stronger, you have to actually create a level of stress response to be able to improve in that function. Okay, because if you don't, you're not going to get any improvement. It's like people doing the same program every week. Their bodies don't change. But if you go too much, you can overtrain, and that's a state of distress and not eustress, and then that can be detrimental. And it's also useful in short spurts for us to respond to a threat. As you can see, the guys over there on the right, one guy's freezing, one guy's running away, which is, we'll touch on these two responses later on as well. But it is useful. We need to have these stress responses to be able to live and survive in the world, because Earth has always been dangerous and it will continue to be. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a fact of life. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I think that's why what we're doing is so important, because it's like stress is always there, and that's all right. Like, it's not such a bad thing, right? It's generally when it's chronic and when we don't know how to handle it, that's when it can become an issue.
That's exactly it. It's chronic. Yeah. So it can become damaging if prolonged for too long after the threat has finished. We'll talk about this a bit later on when we go into the stages of stress.
Cool.
So it can lead to autonomic imbalance or dyshomeostasis. So homeostasis is relative equilibrium in all the body systems. And that's when we're in harmony with nature and our mind and body on the inside. But we're always bouncing in and out of homeostasis. And what really runs homeostasis? Well, it's this autonomic nervous system. You might have heard of it. It's that fight, flight, rest and digest, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system. It's a subconscious nervous system which runs the show underneath the surface. We didn't have this, we wouldn't live. But it's always the one that's doing the on-off switch to threats in our environment. So when I was studying my integrated medicine advanced diploma, we studied every single condition there is, so all the different types of conditions across the spectrum, from neurological to autoimmune to, fertility, to all these different types of conditions. And what came up in all the research, every single type of condition, chronic condition, what was an autonomic dysregulation, so excessive or prolonged stress response, and inflammation was pretty much at the root of nearly all these diseases. So all these different names are out there, but they're all really caused by prolonged stress and prolonged inflammation. So these two go hand in hand. I thought that was quite interesting. So you need to be able to balance the good stress, the hormetic stress, such as ice baths or infrared saunas. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But versus chronic stress. Stress by itself is not bad. It's only bad for prolonged periods. Stress is a critical aspect of life. Yeah, cool, man. So this is called the three phases of stress, or German physiologist Hans Selye, I can't ever say his last name, he called it the general adaptation syndrome, or GAS. And that was to understand the three main phases of stress, or how short-term or long-term stress, how the body adapts to that. It's a very simple model, been around since the 1950s. I still think it's a really great model to use to understand what happens in a stress or threat response. I'm going to use the word threat more than stress. Right? So good stress is not really bad. It's more threat. Okay. So it's broken into three stages. Stage 1 is alarm. Stage 2 is resistance, and stage 3 is exhaustion. So stage 1 is when we have that event, whether it's a psychological event, a physical event, or even an imagined event in your mind, right?
Yeah.
And that creates an alarm. It's like freaking out, about something, for instance, that someone's going to die or something, or you're going to die, but it's only in your mind, or it's actually a car accident. The car accident happens, your body goes into a alarm reaction phase. There's a feeling of fear, potentially some physical whiplash or something like that. And then you're in this fight-flight response, your elevated heart rate, or you might be in this freeze response, and your body is going to stay in that response until it starts to move into stage 2, maybe 1 or 2 days later, if it's a big event. Yeah. We can have micro events and major events. All of them can create an alarm. So we move into stage 2. Stage 2 is resistance or compensation. Human body is a master compensator, right? So what happens with the resistance phase is the homeostasis that we had before the alarm is not the same now. We still move into a compensated homeostasis, right? But it's like we're kind of like, if you've got a pain, we tend to move around it rather than through it. So it's like a false homeostasis. Now that's fine if it's just one alarm or one stress or one threat response. What happens when we start to accumulate more and more of them, and more and more and more of these little micro traumas? A lot of them you're not even aware of. You're not even aware of the gravity of how your physiology actually is thinking about these alarms. But when we start to accumulate a lot of these alarms and, micro traumas, our body is having a harder and harder and harder time to compensate for it. Organ systems are starting to be dysfunctional. We're not breathing properly. We have poor blood flow. We've got accumulated psychological stress, which are stored as electromagnetic wave patterns in the brain. And eventually something comes along and we just move into stage 3, which is called exhaustion. And the system just starts decompensating and shutting down. Okay. So most chronic illness is what I would call there is stage 3 exhaustion.
So would that sort of be, dealing with chronic inflammation, chronic pain, those kind of things?
Yeah, definitely. Chronic pain, anything chronic.
Yeah.
Chronic pain, cancer. Like people often say, "Oh, I just got the cancer." Like it doesn't. Sorry, but it doesn't just happen like that. Like it doesn't just. You don't just catch cancer, or obviously we know that, but you have to look back on the previous 20 years of your life and see what's happened. And I remember one lady recently who's got Parkinson's that I work with, very, very successful woman, and got diagnosed with Parkinson's, and then I showed her some research on linking sleep with Parkinson's, and she just was like, for the last 20, 30 years, she maybe got 4 hours sleep a night. I wonder how much factor that was in the exhaustion. So she's decompensating now, and then we're doing the best to help her. But sometimes when you get to that, you can get out of stage 3, by the way, you can, but you got to get it early. Okay. So most people, all of us, including myself, probably and yourself, Alex, as well, we're living in and out of, we're usually in stage 2. Yeah. We're in some sort of compensation. Okay. You can't be perfect. Can't be perfect. All right.
Damn it.
We can move to the next slide. Okay, so what causes stress? Again, so basically anything that your nervous system determines is a threat, whether that threat is real or perceived. Okay, that's very important. Whether it's real or perceived. It's
like a threat of having no money is a perceived thing, right? Like there's no actual lion that's going to eat you if you have no money. But
well, yeah, in a sense, it's the same thing. It's like it's about money is security now, isn't it? So that's sort of your brain. That part of your brain might perceive it the same as if you're going to get attacked by a lion, right?
Yep.
Just in a different way.
Yep.
All right, so these threats, they can come from different inputs. So cognitive, like thoughts, emotions, feelings, and there can be sensory inputs too. For instance, they could be coming from your body if you have an injury, from your sensors in your skin and joints and muscles. It could also be special sensors such as smells, vision, like in your peripheral vision or in your auditory field as well. So these all things contribute to the outputs of pain, motor responses, that's postural responses, movement adaptations, stress response, and emotions. Okay. So all these little inputs could be potential alarms. And as we see at on on the top right there. Yeah, the more sensitive you, the more triggers or alarms that happen to you, the more sensitive you become, right? So you perceive a threat, initiate a protective response, the postural response to move away from it, initiates healing and recuperation, becomes hypersensitive to similar threats, and more sensitive, more easily triggered, and around and around and around you go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Tammy had a question. She said thoughts cause stress with a question mark.
100%. So when you generate a thought, the motor cortex has to generate a motor plan off that thought. This has been proven in quite a few studies. What that means is that if you think about something, your body will actually react as if it's happening. Does that make sense? So that, like, and then there's those classic stories of the guys with the basketball, and there was guys shooting basketball hoops, and there was the guys shooting basketball and then visualizing, and then there was guys just visualizing, and the people that were visualized getting the ball in the hoop actually came up. I can't remember the name of this study, but they actually got the best results. Okay, so your thoughts 100% will have a stress reaction if that thought is perceived as an alarm or a threat, right? If it's a nice thought, you get the opposite. You get a nice reaction in your body as well. So I hope that answers it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thoughts trigger physiological responses. You know, I certainly know sometimes I think things and 5 minutes later, I'm in this like stressed state, and I'm like breathing more shallow, and I'm like looking around. It's like I'm just thinking of something. I haven't even done anything. I'm still sitting in this chair, you know. So yeah, totally makes sense.
100%.
But I'll go to the next slide. Oh, I'm just gonna have to. There we go. Beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, like, I mean, just think just on that again about thoughts and stuff, is that just think about when you've been feeling sad or like, you know, thinking about something really stressful, right? Watch what happens to your body.
Yeah.
You know, if you're really stressed or if someone's a threat, your shoulders tend to rise up. You know, that's a physiological response that can create like a postural adaptation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or a motor response. Yeah. So, and this is important, very, very important. It's a little bit technical, but it's really, really important to know, because this is within every human being. So no one, you know, unless you're a robot or something like that, then this doesn't apply to you. But if you're a human being, this applies to you, especially in response to stress, threat, and stimuli. So remember, the nervous system is always just scanning your environment for stimuli, and it's decoding. Is this a threat or it's not a threat? That's all it's trying to do, right? So here we've got some models by two different scientists. One on the left is linked to what's called the polyvagal theory by Dr. Stephen Porges, who studied the biology of the stress response and how we have pretty much three main responses to stress. And those three responses are, if you can look at from starting from the bottom to the top on the left-hand side with the black and white image there, you've got the freeze response. So you can see that little person cowering in the corner. That's a reptilian, or it's a very primitive response to stress or threat. Yeah. And then you've got, moving up the chain, you've got the fight flight. So you're running away, you're running towards, or you're running away. And you might be running away or towards in your head, not in your body as well. Yeah. That's the most common. Most people in the world, especially now with what's happening, are living in this fight, flight, or limbic response. And if you look over to that right-hand diagram, that's the area of the brain, both the brain stem and that sort of green, the red bit and the green bits is where these responses are initiated. That freeze response is initiated in that red bit as well. And that red bit is the brain stem. It's very reflexive, very reptilian part of the brain.
It's really the earliest part of the brain, right? It was the first part of our brain before it evolved into the mammalian or the monkey brain, as some call it, right? And then after that, it was the new brain.
100%. Yeah, like all reptiles have this, and all mammals have the other ones, and us humans, we have this neocortex, which is the orange bit.
Yeah.
Now, we all think of the brain as this, cortex, but we can only access that function of the frontal lobe, which is to be able to be calm under pressure and use our logical mind and think through problems and process things and bond. If we go back to the left, in response to stress, we are able to assess, like if something happens like a threat or alarm, we're able to very quickly assess that, oh, okay, that's just a door slamming, and then calm ourselves down, and then we can engage our social engagement system, which allows, it basically takes the brakes off the frontal lobe. So now we can start to engage and be human and not be in this reactive response. But if we go back into where this originates on the left-hand side picture, it all, again, originates in this really subcortical reptilian brainstem area. So when there's these three responses, but these three responses are chosen well before you've been consciously aware of it, well before. And going back to what we've already talked about, the more alarms, the more threats you've had in your life, the more likely you're to respond in these lower two areas, this fight, flight, or potentially the freeze response. There can be other things that are at play here and contributing, such as like retained primitive reflexes, which are neonatal reflexes, or heavy birth trauma, which can lead us to be more susceptible to freeze. Other things such as severe abuse or life threat, especially as in early childhood, can lead us to be more susceptible to the freeze response. So we really
talking about things like you're talking about like the Moro reflex and those kind of things. Yeah. And I'm just thinking about this now, and I'm thinking about times when stressful things have happened for me. In fact, last week something extremely stressful came up in my life, and it felt to me like I was switching between my reptilian brain. It felt like I was actually switching between all three brains over a period of a few hours as this thing was unfolding. 1 minute I'm like, oh, I don't want to do anything, and then the next minute I'm like, I need to run. And in fact, I ended up actually going for a run. And then, but then I was like, no, Alex, just calm down. You're not actually under threat right now. Just take some deep breaths and, relax. So is it possible to switch between all of these brains quickly?
100%. It can happen all the time. So when people often I do see this, and that's really good you brought that up, because people often think, oh, I just freeze, or I'm stuck in fight, flight. Well, every single person can oscillate between these, and we've all been in all of them, hopefully, unless it's someone who's been through severe abuse their whole life, they haven't accessed their social engagement system. But most people, for instance, if someone says, I'm never happy or I'm never socially engaged, you just think, do they like animals? And if they're with an animal or a loved one, they're usually in that socially engaged state. That bonding, that state of bonding. You can't bond with someone. This is where sexual issues come in. You can't bond with someone if you're in these other two states. You just can't, because your body and your brain thinks you're unsafe. Yeah. So this is a very critical thing, and we can change it all the time. So for instance, if you're in the freeze response, if you see them, they're in a position where they're going to start rocking. Well, you would have seen people, and maybe you've had this experience yourself, where you've rocked yourself out of a crying, like an emotional state. That is a reflex response. Your brain just initiated that because it's trying to get you moving. And in your response, you said, I went for a run. Well, that's actually healthy because that got you out of the freeze response. So being in fight flight is healthier than being in a freeze response. Being in a socially engaged response is healthier than both of them. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just hard to get there.
Yeah. Well, the thing we did at the beginning, that whole brain integration, heart focus, that was pretty much getting us into this socially engaged state.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. Okay. So again, very quickly here, illness can be caused by four major things, really. Toxins, toxic load, deficiencies of certain nutrients and vitamins, physical trauma, and emotional trauma. And all of these cause physiological stress or threats. Yeah.
I love that you put magnesium as a deficiency. I think that's pretty on point for a lot of us.
Definitely. It's like 300 something, 20 or 350 enzyme reactions in the body.
Yeah.
If you're going to have a nutrient, have magnesium and have zinc. And, Okay. So signs that you are too stressed, you may be very busy or appear to be busy, but you're not getting too much done. You're rushing around and you're like a little bit of procrastination. Like, I'm busy. How are you going? I'm busy. But what are you actually achieving stuff? And that's usually a sign that if you can't access your frontal lobe, which is like your executive function area, because you're in stress response, this is quite common. Very common is the tight neck and shoulders, in particular these upper trap muscles. As a manual therapist, people say, I got a tight muscle. And I'm like, of course you do, because you're stressed. Yeah. You can't really release these muscles because they're under the command of these stress systems. So whenever this threat response goes on, what happens when we perceive a threat? You generally look towards the threat, right? So going back to these thoughts, right? All these thoughts and emotions and feelings, you might not notice it, but your body is actually reacting to that. Yeah, sort of underneath the surface. Headaches, definitely migraines are a big sign of this. You're way too stressed.
I find whenever I don't suffer migraines anymore, but I find whenever I used to get them, it was always like my body just saying, Alex, you need to stop, and you're not stopping.
Pretty much.
So here's a migraine. Deal with that. So.
Exactly. I mean, all these symptoms, they're actually communication from our body, from our autonomic nervous system, saying you need to change something because what you're doing here is not working for you. So I'm actually going to make you pay attention by giving you pain or some sort of pain in some area, or other sort of physiological dysfunction. So we have constipation, very sympathetic stress response, diarrhea. Didn't spell that right, but that's okay. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and that's basically just stress affecting your bowels. Small intestine bacterial overgrowth, again, that's another one, and lots of other digestive conditions. So difficulty to get to sleep or stay asleep, definitely get to sleep. Often that is your reticular activating system. My back hurts when I'm stressed. Yeah, there you go. That might be your area where your brain, that's your area that your brain knows you pay attention to say, can you please slow down, or can you please do something to manage this stress? It doesn't know language. It can't tell you in language. It can only tell you in sensation. Stay asleep, again, that's another similar pathway. It's basically lack of blood, lack of yin. More prone to feeling like a victim, emotional outbursts such as anger, worry, fear, blame. Like people are like, calm down, or I'm not angry.
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's like, are you?
It's like acting from that sort of shadow place. Just those kind of lower vibrational kind of emotions and
they're all part of us, like we have to accept all these parts of ourselves as well. They're not necessarily good or bad. They just are part of the experience, and they're usually an indicator of where we're at. Inability to think clearly and use your logical mind, brain fog. Brain fog is basically brain inflammation, which is usually caused by gut inflammation, and those two go together. Or, leaky brain, leaky gut. Loss of positivity or humor. Everything is a catastrophe. It's like call up someone like that girl there. Like call up someone, they don't answer, and you're like, oh my god, are they alive still? Have they died? Like stuff like that. I
haven't heard from them for 5 minutes. There must be something wrong.
Yeah. What have I done wrong? Social withdrawal. And this can be social media. I just thought of that then. Like how much stress does social media cause? But social withdrawal, so that people can actually just go into this sort of freeze, withdrawal, withdraw into themselves. Palpitations is a big one. That's when you can perceive your heartbeat, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Breathing dysfunction is always going to be a factor with stress. When you're stressed, that changes your breathing. Now, this is another thing, and this is the thing I have against, the mask wearing, is that breathing dysfunction, lack of oxygen itself, is one of the leading causes of anxiety. Because if your brain feels like you're not getting enough oxygen in, it generally will create anxiety. So, it's an important thing to consider. So your mission basically is to balance these two systems. You've probably all heard of it: sympathetic fight-flight system against the parasympathetic rest and digest system. Okay, they're both good, but I would say that probably maybe when we're living in nature and off the land and doing all this sort of stuff, so like Aboriginal type living, we were probably in sympathetic when we were hunting, which wouldn't have been that much time during the day. And the rest of the time we were pretty much chilling out, relaxing, lounging around, just chilling out. Yeah, but now it's flipped the other way around. So it's like, that's probably like maybe 20% sympathetic, 80% parasympathetic, and now it's probably 80% sympathetic and 20%, if that, parasympathetic. So as you can see, the cat there on the left, he's got massively dilated pupils. He's showing his teeth. He's in a rage response. He's trying to fight, or at least he's going to fight, and he might flee. But he's in that he or she, that cat, whatever it is in a sympathetic response.
That cat could also be just trying to jump onto a really fluffy toy in front of him, though.
It could, and that could be quite stressful.
Yeah. Could be stressful, yeah.
Yeah. And this dude, this chilled out frog, is just lounging on the lily pad there in the lagoon. And we want to have a balance. Yeah, we want to have a balance.
There's sympathetic, there's parasympathetic. Is there any other states of the autonomic nervous system?
Well, that was what we discussed, that slide where we had so basically parasympathetic has two divisions. So you've got the freeze and the socially engaged state both come from parasympathetic.
Okay.
So the freeze state is from the older parasympathetic, the more reptilian branch of the vagus nerve. And the socially engaged state is from the more modern ventral vagal nerve pathway. Both originate. Yeah. So, it used to be just flat. Good. I'm glad you asked that question, because it is a distinction. But the older pathway, the freeze pathway, is the one that runs your digestion and all the other organs. So it's equally as important. Yeah. And again, balancing the frontal lobe, that's the front of your brain, and the amygdala. Now, the amygdala, I know we're getting a bit technical here, but is basically a part in your brain called the limbic system. And it's a very small part of the brain, but it essentially is the one that decides whether something is a threat or it's not a threat. So it's the on-off switch. So if you're walking in the bush and, having a nice leisurely walk, and you place your feet on the ground and you step on something, and you step on it, and your brain then goes, "Oh my God, that's a snake," right? And if the brain then decides it's a snake, the amygdala will turn on this fight-flight response, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and you'll probably run away. Right? But if you're able to step on, you realize you're stepping on a long tree branch, which looks like a snake. And if you've got a not so trigger happy amygdala, you'll be able to freak out for a second and then go, okay, that's just a snake. It's silly Billy. Yeah.
I feel like the amygdala, I imagine, can get trained on new threats quite quickly, and is also a place for different kind of cues and anchors to be triggered. I'm thinking there's some people that when I get an email from them, my amygdala gets triggered, and I'm like, 100%. That's not going to be good email,
100%. It's where suffering is. It's where suffering happens. So too much amygdala activity will increase suffering, whether that's physical or emotional or mental suffering. Okay, so we want that balance. When you are able to engage your frontal lobe, then that tones down or turns down the amygdala response, which will give you more access, if you look at this diagram here, to the hippocampus, which is memory. So often that's why people who are really stressed often have poor memory. So we're seeing that relationship there. So and we okay, so moving on. That's all right. There are lots of ways you can stimulate the prefrontal cortex. I mean, exercise is one of the best ways. Complex movement. There are specific eye drills and stuff. So if you want to get it, learn how to do that, you can contact me as well. This is sort of part of the work we do.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So strategies, again, we're going to be focusing on really, so again, we like all the technologies within the body. but it relies on, a kind of environmental and natural triggers to be able to initiate these stress modulation patterns. So exposure to sunlight, walking in nature, earthing, exercise, meditation, hormetic stresses, and acupressure are some of the ones we're going to talk about. So,
beautiful.
All right. So really cool thing about sunlight, if you want to know about sunlight and light or photon therapy, one of the leaders in the world is obviously Dr. Jack Kruse. I've studied a bit of his work. He's a neurosurgeon who really discovered the power of what light does for the human body, and that it's probably the most important nutrient we have. When you consider eating foods, we're literally eating the light in the food. So his work is amazing. So it's still something I've been studying a few years. I still have to get a lot more to learn about it, but it's an amazing thing. So the sun is very important. So don't wear sunglasses, because what we need is we need the light, the sunlight itself, to actually hit your eyes. You don't have to look at it directly unless you're practicing sun gazing in the first hour of the day. That is a practice, but it's not about looking directly at the sun, but it's actually just having your eyes glasses free, sunglass free, and the light hitting the retina. When the light comes in and hits the retina, it starts like a massive chain of biochemical effects, healthy biochemical effects, okay? One of the few of the cool ones that we got here is that it stimulates the hypothalamus, master gland, pituitary, another master gland, which will then modulate the thyroid and the adrenal glands, okay? They're very much, those two glands are very much involved when the amygdala says, oh my God, it's a snake, or oh my God, we're going to die, or whatever. These stress hormones are released and released and released. So we need to, how cool is this? That people take drugs for this stuff, but if we just have light hitting the eye, it goes in through the retina, into this part of the brain, in the middle of the brain, the hypothalamus, pituitary, the thyroid, the adrenals, and it modulates these chemicals and endocrine glands. The other really cool one is, again, light, AM sunlight has to be in between 12 AM to 12 PM, and that's due to the angle of the sun hitting the earth, so the right angle and the light that creates. Another really cool thing is when light hits the eyes, it releases tryptophan, which builds serotonin. Most people know serotonin. That is the happy hormone, calm hormone. It builds that in the gut. 95% of it's made in the gut, which builds and releases melatonin. We know as our sleep hormone. Many people often take melatonin, but the more serotonin you have, the more melatonin you have, because melatonin is built from serotonin. So all we need to do to build serotonin and melatonin is expose our eyes to AM sunlight, making us happier and improving obviously sleep. And if you get better sleep, you're automatically going to be less stressed.
Yeah. I mean, this slide for me is like everything. Anyone who knows me knows that if the sun's out, I'm generally out in it as well. And it just provides balance when we're connected in with the sun throughout the day. It just, like you've explained, it just tells our body what to do and when to do it, what to create, what to release, what hormones to release and when. And it just provides this balance throughout the day. It's so important getting outside, AM sunlight as well, but even in the afternoon, getting out there and just having your brain learn where the sun is. It just, if it's late in the afternoon and the sun's getting lower, then your brain starts to notice that. Okay, cool, it's starting to get lower. Maybe it starts time to start to convert some of that serotonin into melatonin, and you just stay more in tune with nature that way. It's so important to get outside, especially during COVID, like when we're all inside behind our desks all day. Just getting out for like 20, 30 minutes whenever you can at various times throughout the days and connecting in with that sun. It's going to provide a lot of balance, and it's going to help us feel more connected in with nature, which is going to help us feel less stressed as well. So I think it's a really important slide.
100%. Yeah. If you're going to do one thing, just do that.
Yeah.
Another really important thing is earthing, and that is basically just placing your bare skin, can be your feet, can be other parts of the body, onto the earth's surface. Yeah. So within the earth's surface, whether that's grass or sand or dirt, doesn't really matter. When you place your feet on the Earth's surface, you actually bring in free electrons from the Earth's surface into your body, and that automatically boosts your immune system. It reduces the stress. It harmonizes that autonomic nervous system, improves your cardiovascular system, and it definitely calms the mind. So many times you've had a big stressful day, come home, take your shoes off, place your feet on the earth. You're just like, yeah. So why are electrons important? High electrons are associated with more parasympathetic states, and they also help to reduce oxidative stress in the body. So the more electrons you have in the body, the healthier you're going to be, and also it's going to regulate that thyroid adrenal axis, or that HPA axis, that stress hormone axis. Other ways you can improve electrons is by generating piezoelectricity. So if you have like a vibration machine, even jumping on a trampoline is quite good for that as well. And obviously eating, organic, fresh foods have much higher electrons than obviously processed foods don't have any electrons basically. So
yeah.
And I saw you smile when I said that.
Yeah, absolutely. And same, I always say that fruit is like sunlight crystallized into an edible form. So going back to that sunlight slide as well. Whole foods, so important for these things.
Yeah. Is there any questions so far, guys? Everyone all good?
I think there was one a little while ago, but I'm having an issue and I can't view it, but I'll get them at the end.
Okay. All right. Another one is also tapping into the amazing acupuncture system. The acupuncture system has been around for maybe up to 5,000 years. Chinese acupuncture system. It's also used in Japan and Korea. And that is like a mapped system of highways or energetic and physical pathways in the body. 365 points overall you can tap into. But using tapping and acupressure can be a really, really cool way to take the edge off. And you can be used as like emotional first aid. So for instance, years ago I was one of the guys, I'm pretty sciencey, but I'm also open-minded, but I used to think like tapping, that doesn't work. And then I learned about the science of how it works, and I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing. So essentially when you tap on any part of the body, whether it's an acupoint or not, when you tap on a bone, creates what's called a piezoelectric effect, which means pressure electricity. So you tap on the bone, and that essentially will kind of squeeze the bone, like obviously happens at a very minute level. That squeeze then creates like an electrical charge, which then is then propelled through the connective tissue matrix as a magnetic charge, right? Across the whole connective tissue all throughout your entire body. So if you tap on your head, your body perceives that response, that piezoelectric response instantaneously. That's how fast the signals are transferred. So the guy on the left with those points on the side of the face and the front of the face, they're often used. So if you like on the front of the cheekbone here, on the side of the head here, even here you could do it. The way it would work is if you're.
Is this what I'd do?
Yeah, or the side, on the side of the head, gallbladder 1 or stomach 1. Stomach 1's often used quite a lot. This one at the front of the cheekbone.
Yeah. So
the way you use it is that you could have something pretty stressful that you're thinking about. What you do is you bring up that stress as you're tapping. And then what you should notice is a dropping and a dropping and a dropping and a dropping of your stress response. Other ways you can do is you can say like, I release this stress as you're tapping, as you're playing the stress in your mind as a thought. And you can 30 seconds to a minute.
Do you have to tap a particular way? Like, is it both at the same time or is it alternating?
Look, I have ways we can test to that, but unless you're doing self-testing, don't worry about that. Just go intuitively with it. Just go intuitively with what feels right. You'll know. Does it have to be at the same time or like an off center? You'll know. You'll feel it because you'll feel it straight away because change happens at the speed of the nervous system. So tapping anywhere, and you've got many acupoints. These ones here are pretty popular. This one here, the emotional stress release point. So the one on the front of the head here. And even just holding your hand here, like how many times, like this point here is literally called the emotional stress point, or ESR, it's called. And how many times do you see when you're really stressed and you're like, oh God, you know, you just reflexively go there because you must know. So if you can even just do that, or just place your fingers there and just lightly hold, very lightly hold. And within a few minutes, you'll notice a difference. Even just with like fingers. Because acupressure stimulates the releasing and modulation of all these calming neurotransmitters such as dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. And this has been shown in many, 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 many scientific studies. Many. So you'll get a chemical response from doing this. Yeah. It's more of a first aid thing. So how are we going for time?
Yeah, we're going all right. We're going to go a bit over, but we always go over in these. There's so much good information, mate. So let's keep moving.
Okay, cool. Now, obviously, movement is life, right? You know, everything about our existence is about movement. Okay, so you don't have to move like a crazy person. You don't have to do CrossFit. You don't have to do triathlons. You can if you want to, if your body's ready to do that. But often, if you do that before your body's ready, you'll create more stress. But we do need to move, and we need to move in different ways, and the whole purpose of moving, not many people know this, but when you understand it and you learn about this, the main reason we move is to stimulate our brain. Yeah, because every part of our body is mapped by the brain. There is a map of every single part of our body on the outside and the inside within different areas of the brain. So then when we move that area of the body, we stimulate that part of the brain. If there is an area of the brain that's less stimulated, that creates a threat response. So,
yeah, I heard a good one a while ago about like moving your constellations. You know, if you had like a point kind of on your shoulders and on your hips, and like if you could kind of imagine, like, you know, like you see those people when they're doing the movie, like on the green screen, they got like the dots. If you had like a dot on each of your shoulders and on your hips on both sides, like if that created some sort of like structure, like throughout the day, we only move them in certain ways, like if we're walking, you know, or if we're running or whatever. And so to move your constellations in a different way, although it might look kind of strange, in doing that, you're actually activating more of your brain. You're actually moving things and twisting and
100%.
Yeah, moving everything in a different way. And after you do that for like 5 or 10 minutes, I remember once I was doing it in a car park, and then I got teased because like, Alex, what are you doing in the car park, man? That looks strange. But after doing that, you're just more awake or aware, or you can just,
and calmer as well.
Yeah, you just feel different. You feel better.
That's why dancing is really good. So if you're ever feeling really stressed or even just down, just put on your favorite music and just dance like crazy. Like seriously, what you're doing there is you're stimulating the brain. Like you're stimulating the brain, you're releasing endorphins, which are painkillers, and they make you feel good. And it feels good to just listen to music, something that makes you feel good. You know, that's getting you into this socially engaged state. So that's another hack. It's a hack that we have there. And it's very important to do, especially in this time right now where everyone's very, very serious, it seems. So, yeah, it releases endorphins, natural painkillers. It also brings blood to the frontal lobe when we're talking about high intensity exercise. No worries. Thanks for tuning in, Tammy. We'll see you soon. Now, yeah, it brings blood to the frontal lobe and it calms the monkey mind, limbic system. All right. Movement creates new neural connections. What's it called? Neuroplasticity. So if you only move in like the same way every time, you're not creating any new connections. So when you go outside that movement capacity, so if you only move in one plane of movement, the fact if someone says do this, or you say get up and down off the floor, but you haven't done that for 20 years, that's a threat response. That's a stress response. So we need to be getting up and down off the floor, rolling around, or doing all this sort of stuff, moving like kids do and babies do. The more complex the movement, the more new connections are formed. Whenever you're learning, you're creating neuroplasticity and your brain is becoming safer.
And
it builds
more calm.
More calm, yeah. It builds new neurons called neurogenesis and stimulates the production of mitochondria, the little energy powerhouses. So it's the only way you can really build them.
Mm.
Now, there's a diagram over here, and it's talking about different areas of the brain that respond to different types of movement. So aerobic exercise is good for the hippocampus. Lifting weights is good for the frontal lobe. Yoga is good for the frontal lobe as well, because you have to concentrate generally in those poses. High intensity intervals regulate the hypothalamus. Sports drills are really good for like the cerebellum and the basal ganglia, these sort of coordination type areas. Yeah, so that's why it's playing sport even is, we take it for granted. We think, oh, it's just sport, but actually it's really, really good for your brain. These different changes like tennis or something like that, golf as well. Yeah. So you got to have movement. Just on movement again, if you were to do one thing, it's walking. Okay. So if you're really stressed, just walk 20 minutes a day. If you're stressed for a long period of time and it's building up and building up, drive to a walk in nature, turn off your phone, take it with you, walk for 4 hours, 4 to 5 hours. The first hour or two, you'll still be thinking about everything. But as you start to walk and then tune to nature, you will actually finish the walk a completely different human being, because the walking itself processes all this emotional stress.
Yeah, I think sometimes we overcomplicate things. I say we, I'm probably just talking to myself, but I'm sure there's other people out there too where, I look at this and I think, oh, I'll go lift some weights and I'll stimulate my prefrontal cortex and, I'll do some sports drills, and it's like, and then sometimes when it get too hard, walking, just walk, keep it simple, if nothing else. The amount of times when I've been working and then I'm stuck on some problem, and then I just go for a walk for 10 minutes, come back, and you've got the solution. Walking is, if nothing else, is like one of the most important things we can do. It's so simple.
Yeah, Brooke, my partner, said walk barefoot. Yes, and that's very true. Walking barefoot, for many reasons as well, gives you more stimulation. In itself is more stimulation to the brain as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Thanks, walk barefoot on the earth during the morning and get some of that sunlight. We're ticking multiple boxes. 100%.
Stacking things together.
Yeah.
Okay, we've already done this at the beginning of the session, where we had, that's what we did at the beginning of the session. We clasped our hands together, we focused on our heart, and if you want to breathe in for 6 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds, you activate the feeling of love, appreciation, or gratitude for self and other. And what that does, as you see on that little slide on the right, if you're frustrated, you'll have these, asynchronous kind of biorhythms, but as soon as you go into a state of appreciation, these oscillations harmonize, and that means that you're in this sort of resonant response with yourself and your environment. So, all right.
Sense of being at ease.
Exposure to hormetic stresses, and then obviously ice baths, are a part of it. That's like cold shock. It is stressful. And you obviously don't want to do that too. Like, you've got to make sure you're capable of doing that, because it actually, if you've done it at the wrong time, it'll make it worse. But extremes, cold and hot, where you've got the saunas there, they're hormetic stresses, which are designed to help modulate this autonomic nervous system, help it become more resilient, right? Do you want to add anything there with the saunas?
Yeah, I saw a study not long ago showing that sauna use activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and near infrared's been shown to increase cell mitochondrial efficiency and help rebuild. But also, like you were just saying, it's a hormetic stressor. Like, it's a stress, but it's a good stress, and you go in there at 60 degrees for half an hour, and the last 5 minutes you count down the time because it's effing hot. But you come out of there and you feel invigorated. You get that release of norepinephrine and some dopamine as well, and you feel good, and you feel like you've kind of, especially if you go a hotter session, you've kind of survived something, but you kind of strengthen yourself in that way coming out of a hot sauna session. So
100%, you've strengthened, you've gained more physiological resilience. Now, with ice bath is very extreme, but you can go to cold showers, right? It doesn't have to be jumping straight into a cold shower, but you can oscillate from 20 seconds hot to 10 seconds cold. 20 seconds hot, 10 seconds cold. Much easier, same benefit.
Yeah, and like you said, the key there is like knowing what you're capable of, and always tune into your body, like listen to your body. What is it telling you? But if you're fit and you've worked your way up to it, definitely. I mean, 20 minutes in the sauna, really hot, and then jump in the ice bath for 4 minutes, jump back in the sauna for 10, ice bath for another 4. Like you feel alive after that, and it's hard. It's definitely stressful at the time, but like you say, it's a hormetic stressor. It's not chronic. Like we're not going sauna and ice bath for 5 weeks,
No.
nonstop.
Yeah. And it will actually improve your ability to withstand this constant barrage of stress and stimuli.
Yeah, I always look at, physical stresses like that. Same with doing heavy weights. Like there's an intensity required to get through a heavy weight session. You come out of that, life's just a bit easier, Not that I'm lifting very heavy weights at the moment. Don't judge me.
Neither am I. And then vagus nerve. Now, I know it's getting quite to the end of the night, guys, so I'm not going to go massive in this, but the vagus nerve essentially is one of those cranial nerves. It's where that fret response, that freeze, and also the healthy response comes from. But if you can look at that pathway on the right-hand side, it goes from the brain stem all the way down into the organs, the heart, the lungs, stomach, liver, gallbladder, spleen, pancreas, like all the organs basically. So it's very, very important for the homeostasis of those organs. So it's something that we would like to keep well stimulated. In my clinic, I do electrical stimulation to the ears. It's a really, really potent tool. So that stimulates the vagus nerve and it gets it stronger. It's essentially like a personal trainer to the vagus nerve. So if that's something you're interested in, you can hit me up and we can talk about that and getting you sorted out for that. But there's other ways. Sorry, no, you go. There's other ways we can stimulate the vagus nerve, like humming, or anything where you're making that sort of sound stimulates, because the nerves go into the back of the throat. There, it's the soft palate in the back of the throat. So that's why things. Have you been to a yoga class and they say Om? That is actually it's a vagus nerve stimulation. That's why you feel good afterwards. Humming. Doing that as much as possible, as much as you can whenever you remember it, gargling, with water in your mouth, stretching your neck, stretching your traps is actually a stimulus into the vagus nerve through a little bit of a roundabout loop. Electrical stimulation and working on your organs. So even if you just do a little bit, if you either go see a qualified practitioner in organ manipulation, or if you can just give your belly a bit of a soft massage, that is actually stimulating the vagus nerve. If you stimulate those organs, as you can see by that pathway, you'll actually send afferent information back up into that vagal nuclei, which will calm the system down.
This might be a silly question, but is the vagus nerve made out of the same things as our other nerves in our body? Is it just it's just a particular system of the nervous system?
It's just a nerve. It's just a different. It's a type of nerve. It's called the wandering nerve. It's like the longest and most complex nerve in the body. If you look at that, it's like the sciatic nerve, for instance, is the thickest nerve in the body, but that's like a peripheral nerve. This is a cranial nerve. It comes out of the brain and it goes in right through all those organ systems there. So its job is to essentially perceive what's happening in those organs and then send that information up to the brain to let it know what's happening internally. So there are 2 pathways. One is faster conducting, which is myelin sheath. That's that social engagement pathway. And then the slower pathway, older, unmyelinated, is the one you're looking at there that goes down into the gut. And that's that dorsal pathway.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It makes me think about when people are eating and we intuitively go, like,
yeah, I know.
It's like trying to stimulate our vagus nerve so we can go into a rest and digest state.
100%. Yeah, that's a good connection there. All right. Yeah. Now, so things we need to do to remove excessive stress: stop watching the news. I'll say it again: stop watching the news. Look, short doses for the news, but even same goes with social media. That's thrown me into a spin a few times. Limit your exposure to this sort of stuff. It's all quite negative. It can change your physiology just by watching it. Limit exposure to my sister-in-law constantly hums and is never stressed. Yeah, there you go. Some people are tapped in. Limit exposure to non-native EMFs, electromagnetic fields, such as power lines or Wi-Fi and stuff like that. And you can use argonite crystals and a device called the Fire Waves, which I have a link to later on. If anyone needs that, I can send it to them. And these things can protect you from these EM fields, because that in itself can increase the stress response. Limit exposure to blue screens, especially at night, where blue blockers. These aren't the best ones here, but I feel like I definitely notice a difference with them. So whenever you're using technology, but that being said, if it's a nice day and you're outside and you're on the computer, it's better to take them off because then you want to get that sunlight in the eye. So you're still looking at a screen, but you're getting sunlight, so it's okay. But if you're inside in the day looking at a screen, still wear your blue blockers.
Yeah, or like right now, if I didn't have a big light here, I would have these on, right? Because I'm looking at screens and it's 10 past 8. The sun's been down for hours. I don't want any of this blue light coming in. So
100%. The reasoning for that mainly is that when your eyes look at a blue lit screen or backlit screen, that light tells the brain that it's midday. So if you're looking at it without blue blockers right now, your physiology is acting as if it's midday.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. That's what's happening if we're looking at the TV at nighttime, right? Your brain's like, it's the middle of the day. And then we turn the TV off and go to bed 5 minutes later and we're like wondering why we can't sleep.
Yep. Attitudes to adopt. I just thought I'd put this here. A bit more conscious focus here is just surrender to whatever's happening, because it's, only focus on what you can change. Like, I myself and a lot of other people have had to deal with this, with what's happening right now, with lockdowns and everything. Just accept it, surrender to it. That takes away a lot of stress. Just let go. Be rather than do. Spend time being still. Like yesterday afternoon, I just felt like I needed to lie on the couch for a little bit. I was meant to be doing something else, but I just lay there for a bit and kind of felt this feeling of guilt. But I was like, no, I feel like I just need to lie here, So just spend time being rather than always doing. Yeah.
And not with the news on in the background telling us the daily Victorian COVID toll. We don't know that.
Yeah. How to know what to do when. This is not, and there's no such thing as an exact science with the body, but yeah, if your symptoms are worse as the day goes on, you may need more passive and yin like approaches, such as earthing, breathing, exercise, tapping, acupressure, more sleep, etc. Generally, you've just got overload and you need more yin, you need more stillness, okay? Like sort of more higher order overload. Your symptoms are worse in the morning, you're a bit more stuck. You need to move more. So the movement such as movement approaches, exposures to sunlight, these are the things that are going to actually get you out of the stress response. So sometimes people get stressed because they're not moving. So they need to actually do the movement that reduces stress and that balances them.
So many times I've gotten up and I'm like stressed about all the stuff to do, and then I'll just smash out a 6K run, and then it's like, I'm actually going to get all that done and I don't need to worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's awesome. So the key takeaways, guys, so your body holds all the technology it needs to harmonize itself within itself, okay? And it's about finding this relative balance on a moment-to-moment basis, tuning in with your body. There's different ways you can learn biofeedback, but, having that, once you do more of that heart-focused meditation, which I think is the best meditation out there, you'll generate better body awareness, okay? So harmonizing your body with nature, AM sunlight, earthing, sleeping, at the right time between 10 and 10 a.m., 10 p.m., 10 or 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Harmonize your heart and brain. the heart-focused breathing, spending time in nature again. I just put that again. That oscillates with the Schumann resonance. Move often every day. Walking, weights, sports drills, change it up. Yeah, stimulate your vagus nerve regularly, humming. You want to get into a stimulator, contact me. Use tapping as a mental first aid tool. Limit exposure to these, EMFs. Limit exposure to the news and Facebook. Yeah, so they're the main key takeaways, guys. All the technology you need is actually you've pretty much got all of it already. So you don't need to search for anything else. It's just about harmonizing your body with nature, essentially, and giving a little bit of a gentle reminder when it needs to.
Would you say it's also having the awareness of knowing when you're in a stressed state to then actually take some action?
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's really good. So obviously, how would you do that? Have you noticed that you're breathing quicker, you've just tight through the shoulders? That's a really good point. It's just like you have to know where you're at to have that self-awareness to be able to change. Sometimes you won't. And if you notice yourself thinking in loops and loops and loops, then just try and come back to that present moment. It's very easy to say these sort of things, but us being humans, we can very easily get we can get tripped up by these things. But I will say this as well: you do need to do specific work to release all past injuries and all past psychological injuries. That has to be done. Okay, we can't do this on this webinar, but that has to be done with the suitable practitioner, and that is a process that will take the rest of your life. But quicker than you think too, if you get the right type of practitioner or right therapist. We need to tone down this stress response, this limbic emotional response, to be able to make better decisions for our health and live a better life. Yeah,
words of wisdom. I love it. These are some links to some of the things you talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. So can you post them somewhere, or like you post it on the video or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like links to like earthing mats and the Wi-Fi protection devices, the blue blockers, and a place to get the vagus nerve kits as well. So
awesome.
Yeah. So thank you everyone that tuned in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm going to stop the share for a second. If it'll, I'm having a problem with my mouse. Here we are. There we go. If anyone has any questions, now is a good time to put it in the chat. Whilst we're waiting for anyone to post some questions, Nick, first of all, thank you so much. There's been so much insightful information that you've just passed on. I feel like I have a few things that I want to go and kind of revisit there. If people want to find out more about you and potentially work with you, how can they do that? Where can they find you?
Okay, so I have an Instagram page that I'm pretty active on. Thanks, Ella. I'm pretty active on Instagram. My handle is Functional Neurohealth, all one word. I'm posting pretty regularly on that, and lots of information about how I work and more detailed information to what we covered today. And then you can just message me through that, or you can jump onto the website through there and contact me that way, or you can contact me via email at nick@functionalneurohealth.com. And what was that? Sorry.
So a couple of questions coming through. One, where can I get the vagus nerve stimulator? That was from John.
So if you want to know, it's called nourishingtherapiesaustralia.com.au. nourishingtherapiesaustralia.com.au. Just Google that, and that should come up. And that is a Queensland-based practitioner, naturopath. She's done the vagus nerve course like I have, and I've sent many people to her. Now, if you're going to do it, you need to book in with a qualified practitioner, such as myself or her or someone else, to be able to run you through how to do it, because it's simple to do, but it's based off your medical history and your background and everything. We've got to get the right variables so you actually get the benefits from the stimulation, because it's a standalone therapy, but there's a little bit of finicky. There's a bit of a science to it. So.
Yeah, cool. And John also asks, as well as the EMF blocker. I think maybe he's talking about the Wi-Fi blocker. But
yeah, Pranan, these links will be on the video. They'll be on the recording. All these links here.
Yeah, I can share my screen again very quickly. And
3 a.m. in the USA. Yeah, wow, keen.
Can
There it
everyone
is.
see that? Hope so. It's cool. Yeah, I can write it in the chat, John. Also, I just wanted to let everyone know that this I'll email these links around as well in the follow-up email, which will have a copy of the video too. So no stress there, John. I'm putting it in the chat for you, mate. There you go. Thanks for tuning in the US. It's awesome. No worries, Belinda.
Hey, Belinda.
Some people are following you on Instagram already, Nick, which is great.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
Thanks, mate.
Oh, thank you so much. Hold on. I got a couple more questions here. Will you email the slides? Yes, certainly. Well, Nick, are you happy for me to email the slides around?
Yeah.
Awesome. And Joe McCallum said, I just wanted to say thank you to you, Alex and Nick, for this presentation. A lot to take away. Regards, Joe. That is awesome.
Thanks,
More
Joe.
than welcome, Joe.
Cheers. Are you reading that one?
And Grace has said, as an exercise instructor for older adults, you are totally correct about movement and music. It does give them a better mood. Yeah, totally agree, Grace. Earlier in the year, I was fasting for 30 days and I didn't move really at all because after 5 days, I had no energy. And about a week and a bit into refeeding, I put music on and I realized I hadn't listened to music the whole time I fasted. And by putting the music on, it then made me dance and I had this full like emotional release. I was like crying and sobbing like on this oval in Costa Rica. It was amazing. It totally releases stagnant energy and also just so clearly activates parts of your brain. So I couldn't agree more with that. Awesome. Lots of congratulations coming in, Nick, all coming your way. So
cool. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. And someone asked a question about EMDR. Yeah. That's eye movement desensitization. I don't know what the R stands for. It's something like that. Yeah. And I think it's awesome because, I mean, as a functional neurologist, I understand about the eye positions and how they relate to different areas of the brain. So movements of the eyes, very, very powerful in being able to release stored emotional conflicts within the limbic system. So that's actually a huge part of my work. If anyone's seen me and we're doing an emotional work, we often will do that, and it can be very, very powerful. And so that I haven't studied EMDR. I've started looking into the mechanisms of it. It's pretty similar. So I think it's a great thing to do. So when we're talking about releasing that stored emotional trauma in the limbic system, that's definitely a good way to do it. But like with everything, you got to make sure you do it at the right time. I do have a current client who's a stroke person, and she came to see me, and then she started that, but we hadn't got a hold of her gut yet, and other like her neurotransmitters. So it actually it was too much for her too soon. But we've got it stabilized, and now she's back doing it, and it's actually been really helpful. So it's like anything, you got to do it at the right time. So you got to have skilled practitioner who's able to assess that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Nick, cool. Did you want to add anything else before we wrap up?
No, it's just like, again, rewatch this. You might have to rewatch it a few times and just take notes. And there'll be more context on my Instagram, and there's lots of different resources that I got this from as well. So if you need to know who I learned it from, I'm happy to tell you. And I'll be putting together a vagus nerve course as well, and other courses for both general public and practitioners. So look out for the updates for that. And there's lots of free content on my website as well. But again, thanks guys. Stay on top of your stress, especially now in this crazy time. And if you do, you can pretty much get through anything, I think.
Yeah, awesome. Well, you've just given us the tools to be able to handle the craziness that's happening at the moment. So very much appreciative. Nick, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And look forward to doing this again with you soon.
For sure, mate.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.